Nestled between mist-covered mountains and shrouded in dense woods, lay the forgotten town of Ravenswood. It had been cursed, they said, since that fateful night a century ago when the haunting express claimed the lives of all its passengers. Every year, on the anniversary of that tragic event, the legend told of a ghostly train that would emerge from the shadows, billowing forth eerie plumes of spectral steam. It was said that the souls of those lost that night still rode the train, trapped in an eternal loop of despair. As the sun set on the eve of the anniversary, a group of daring teenagers gathered at the old, rusted tracks that snaked through the heart of Ravenswood. Among them were Jake, the skeptic, Emma, the historian with a fascination for the supernatural, Ben, the thrill-seeker, and Sarah, whose eyes glittered with equal parts trepidation and excitement. The night grew dark, the wind howled, and then, as the clock struck midnight, it appeared. The haunting express materialized, its form wavering between the realms of the living and the dead. Its windows glowed with an otherworldly light, casting ghastly shadows across the desolate tracks. A chill swept through the air as the train ground to a slow, haunting halt. The doors creaked open, inviting the intrepid souls inside. Against their better judgment, they climbed aboard, their hearts pounding in uneasy anticipation. Once within, they were met with a scene that defied logic. The interior was opulent, as if preserved in time, with velvet seats and polished brass fixtures gleaming under the spectral glow. But there were no fellow passengers, only an eerie silence that seemed to reverberate through the carriages. As the train began to move, Jake couldn't help but scoff, dismissing the whole affair as an elaborate hoax. Emma, however, felt a strange energy in the air, like a presence watching, waiting. Hours passed, the rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks lulling them into a sense of uneasy calm. Suddenly, a distant, mournful wail pierced the stillness, echoing through the carriages. It was the anguished cry of souls trapped in eternal torment. The air grew colder, the walls seemed to close in, and shadows danced along the edges of their vision. Panic set in as realization dawned that they were not alone. Figures, ethereal and translucent, appeared in the seats around them, their eyes hollow voids of despair. "Leave now," a hollow voice whispered, emanating from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was a plea from the lost souls, a warning to escape while they still could. As the train hurtled forward, the landscape outside transformed into a nightmarish dreamscape. Twisted trees with gnarled branches reached out like skeletal fingers, and the moon hung low, casting a sickly pallor over the land. With newfound determination, the group pushed through the spectral passengers, racing towards the front of the train. Each carriage seemed to stretch on endlessly, a labyrinth of haunting memories. Finally, they reached the engine, only to be met by the hollow eyes of the conductor, a shadowy figure draped in tattered uniform, his face a ghastly mask of sorrow. With a mournful sigh, he gestured towards the tracks ahead. As the train neared the precipice of a crumbling bridge, realization struck like lightning. This was the same bridge that had claimed the lives of the ill-fated passengers a century ago. The train would reenact the tragic plunge into the abyss, repeating the cycle of doom for all eternity. With seconds to spare, they leapt from the train, tumbling onto the rocky ground. They watched in horror as the haunting express hurtled into the abyss, consumed by the darkness below. They returned to Ravenswood, forever changed by their brush with the spectral train. The legend of the haunting express lived on, a chilling reminder of the thin veil that separates the living from the restless souls of the departed. And so, each year, as the anniversary approached, they would gather at the tracks, not to tempt fate, but to pay their respects to those forever trapped on the haunting express. The night was dark and cold as the wind howled through the desolate train station. The Vanishing Line, a notorious high-speed train, was scheduled to arrive at midnight. The townspeople spoke of it in hushed tones, warning of its sinister reputation. It was said that once you boarded, you might never return. Samantha, a skeptical investigative journalist, had heard these stories and dismissed them as urban legends. Intrigued, she decided to embark on a journey to uncover the truth behind the Vanishing Line. Armed with a notebook and a camera, she stood on the platform, waiting for the approaching terror. As the clock struck midnight, the ground trembled beneath her feet. The train emerged from the shadows, its sleek, black form gliding into the station with an eerie silence. Samantha took a deep breath and stepped on board, determined to unravel the mysteries that shrouded this locomotive. Inside, the train exuded an unnatural chill. The air was heavy with a palpable sense of foreboding. The seats were empty, yet the atmosphere seemed thick with the presence of unseen passengers. Samantha made her way down the narrow aisle, her footsteps echoing eerily. Hours passed, and she explored every compartment, finding nothing but emptiness and silence. Just as doubt began to creep into her mind, she heard a faint whisper, like a distant echo. Samantha followed the sound, her heart pounding in her chest. In the last car, she discovered a small, dimly lit chamber. The walls were lined with faded photographs, each depicting passengers who had vanished on this very train. Some of them wore expressions of terror, frozen in time. Others had resigned looks, as if they knew their fate was sealed. Suddenly, the train jolted, sending Samantha stumbling against the wall. The compartment seemed to come alive, as if responding to her presence. The photographs flickered, their subjects shifting and contorting. The air grew colder, and Samantha's breath formed frosty clouds. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall and cloaked in darkness. The figure's eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, fixing on Samantha with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. It was the conductor, a spectral being bound to this cursed train. "You've come seeking answers," the conductor's voice echoed, sending chills through the air. "You're brave, but curiosity has its price." Samantha steeled herself, demanding to know the truth behind the vanishing line. The conductor's tale unfolded, revealing a tragic accident that had claimed the lives of countless passengers. Their spirits, trapped within the train, sought solace in the living world. As the story reached its climax, the train hurtled forward at a terrifying speed, hurtling through a tunnel of darkness. Samantha clung to the walls, her world spinning in a chaotic blur. The train seemed to defy reality, existing in a realm between life and death. When the tumultuous ride finally ended, Samantha found herself back at the desolate station, the vanishing line vanishing into the night. She was shaken, forever changed by the experience. From that moment on, Samantha carried the weight of the vanishing line's secrets. She knew she had glimpsed a world beyond mortal comprehension, a place where the living and the departed converged. The memory haunted her, a reminder that some mysteries were not meant to be unraveled. And so, the legend of the vanishing line continued, a spectral journey that defied explanation, leaving those who dared to venture into its depths forever marked by its chilling embrace. Once a bustling railway, now reduced to decaying tracks and forgotten platforms, Blackwood Station was a place shrouded in mystery. It sat at the edge of a dense, dark forest, where shadows seemed to dance in the moonlight, and whispers of the past lingered in the cold, night air. As legend had it, every night at the stroke of midnight, a spectral train would thunder through the station. The Midnight Conductor, they called him. His story was one of revenge, a soul bound to the rails, seeking retribution for a long-forgotten betrayal. On a chilly autumn evening, the Thompson family found themselves stranded near the Erie station. Their car had broken down on the isolated road that led to Blackwood, and there was no sign of civilization for miles. With no other options, they made their way towards the station, guided only by the faint glow of the full moon. As they approached, the station seemed to come alive with a sinister energy. The rustling leaves and distant hoots of owls were drowned out by an ominous, distant rumble. The Midnight Conductor was on his way. The family hurriedly sought refuge in the forgotten waiting room, its wooden benches cracked and creaking. Inside, the air hung heavy with a chilling presence. A portrait of the conductor, his eyes hollow and accusatory, stared down at them from the wall. As the clock struck midnight, the ground beneath them trembled, and a deafening whistle pierced the stillness. The train materialized from the shadows, a spectral entity of metal and mist. The Midnight Conductor stood on the platform, a phantom figure cloaked in tattered remnants of a once-dapper uniform. His eyes locked onto the terrified family, and with a motion of his hand, he beckoned them towards the train. Panic surged through their veins, but escape seemed impossible. the doors of the waiting room slammed shut, sealing their fate. With trembling steps, they boarded the spectral locomotive, each footfall echoing eerily through the empty cars. The train seemed to stretch on endlessly, its windows revealing a shifting landscape of desolation and dread. As the journey pressed on, the family could hear whispers carried by the wind, tales of betrayal and tragedy. It became clear that the midnight conductor's existence was a tortured one, bound to the tracks by a thirst for revenge against those who had wronged him. The train hurtled through tunnels of darkness and across bridges that seemed suspended in the abyss. Time lost meaning as they were enveloped in a nightmarish trance. With every passing moment, the conductor's presence grew more oppressive, his anger palpable. It was clear that they were not intended to merely be passengers, they were pawns in a sinister game. In a desperate bid for survival, the family pieced together the fragments of the conductor's tragic tale. They unraveled the web of betrayal and greed that had led to his haunting. With newfound resolve, they devised a plan to free him from his tortured existence. As the train approached a decrepit, overgrown station that seemed to exist in a realm between the living and the dead, they put their plan into motion. With a final, harrowing confrontation, they managed to break the cycle of vengeance. The spectral train shuddered to a halt, dissipating into mist, leaving the Thompsons standing alone on the abandoned platform. The midnight conductor was finally at peace. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, the once ominous station seemed to sigh with relief. The forest no longer whispered with dark secrets, and the air no longer bore the weight of a vengeful soul. The Thompson family left Blackwood Station forever changed, carrying with them a tale of darkness and redemption, a story of a midnight train and the conductor who found peace at last.